I think it's always good to have other people put their hands on you, give you different eyes, give you different thoughts, right, to think differently about your body. He works with a lot of pros. He's got some skins because he's in the area. But he's a chiropractor, he's a neurosophy therapist and doctor, and what he does is basically he treats injuries, both chronic and even before they even happen. And a lot of it is, it's got having a good eye, right, and seeing some of the problems that you have. But it's also just learning about your body even more, right? Like the more you know about your body, the more you're able to prepare for what's to come. And if you treat your body like it's a business, right, you're going to get way better return on that investment.
But what I want to talk to you guys today is about injury risk, right? So when we talk about the risk of injury for you guys as athletes, whether you're at the level of playing in middle school, high school, into college, or eventually to the most elite level that there is, we can have two types of risks of injury, things that make it a little bit more likely that you would get hurt. We've got extrinsic problems, which I couldn't even pronounce that just now, so we won't unpack that too much, but that's just stuff you can't avoid. Like there are studies that show on a cold day, there's more concussions in NFL games. What's going on there? That's something you can't avoid. You can't like magically do some dance and make the temperature go up, but there's some increase in risk, so we're not going to worry about those sorts of things. What we're going to worry about is intrinsic risks, things that we can modify. And some of the big ones that we see out there for athletes who have a higher risk of a particular type of injury, one of the really, really big ones that's out there is just prior history of an injury in that area. If you're in this room and you've sprained your ankle before, you're immediately the most in the group of people that's most likely to sprain their ankle in this room. That's just how it works. It doesn't matter if you're stiff or tight, or I'm more loose than you, or I'm tighter than you. If you've heard it before, you are more likely to hurt it again. And the reason for that is that a lot of times, not always, but a lot of times, rehab doesn't take place fully, right? We've all gone through it where we're like, okay, good enough to get back on the field, and those exercises take a little bit too much of my time. I need to focus on training. I need to focus on, that girl. I need to focus on whatever it is. And ultimately, the tissue never fully recovered. Now, when you get to the level of the pros, some of the guys that I worked on and other guys there, it's not unheard of for these guys to spend 6 figures in a year just on care, just on having someone take care of them. And it's, the guys that saw me, I'm not the only person seeing them. They're going to get dry needling, they're getting acupuncture, they're getting chiropractors, they're going to see their team docs, they're going to see the orthos when they need them, they're getting injections, they're getting prolotherapy, they're getting all kinds of stuff. It is absolutely not unheard of for people to spend 6 figures. I know a guy that plays for the Skins that has a team of a handful of guys flown out from St. Louis every week. 3 people that he flies on a plane to come work on here because he's just in love with them. It's from his hometown. He knows them, he trusts them. So at that level, it makes sense to spend all that money, right? Because you're already making the money. If I can put 6 figures into this and I'm going to make 7 figures next year because I'm still healthy enough to play, well, that makes sense. Right now, unless you guys are independently wealthy, maybe not so much, doesn't make as much sense to be putting that kind of time in or putting that kind of money in. So how do we address it, right? Adaptation, it's what our bodies do every single day. It's why you guys are here, right? You want to see your bodies adapt for the better. So I call that adapting up, right? We want to take our explosiveness, our speed, all these things. We want to see these metrics get better. So how do we do that? We put a certain type of stress on our body, right? That's what you're doing every day. You're putting different types of stress on your body to hopefully get it to adapt. You can adapt down, right? When I was in school for hours and hours a day and I was sitting here like this, reading or just slumping in class, that was me adapting down. My body, with the forces that were put on it, was adapting to poorer positions, right? And it's eventually going to get more comfortable there. Or you can just maintain, right? So we want to focus on, obviously, these two and avoiding this one. And in talking about really where I butter my bread when it comes to soft tissues, which is it's the easiest and quickest and usually the most, has the most profound impact. The thing that you can change in your body is the soft tissues. So when we talk about soft tissues, we talk about muscles, we talk about tendons, we talk about ligaments, connective tissue of all sorts, and ultimately, what I work on a lot in my office is the connective tissue that surrounds the muscles. That stuff's called fascia. We can unpack that if you want to, but we won't get into it too much. But just to understand, that's part of what you're addressing when do you guys do your mobility work? Like when do you hop on the foam roller or the lacrosse ball? You do that before, right? So that's really what you're addressing. You're trying to prepare the tissues. There's other things that you're having an impact on by doing that, but you're trying to prepare those connective tissues and address any tightness there so that ultimately the muscles are freed up to do what they need to do, right? You bring blood flow to the area. And that's one of the reasons that this stuff is such a weak link, right? When it comes to either recovery from an injury or to addressing the underlying problems that might lead to a higher risk of injury, connective tissue tends to be that weak link as compared to muscles, which are easier to change in a fast period of time. And the reason for that is connective tissue is everywhere, right? It goes beyond the reach of an individual muscle. My biceps is covered in these giant things that I've got on my arms. Can you guys see those? So my biceps are coated in a connective tissue coating that actually allows the biceps to transmit forces beyond the reach of where it starts and ends, because it's actually blended and continuous with some of the tissues in my forearm, with some of those muscles. So the stuff is everywhere, which means you can have a problem, tightness, which we'll talk about in a little bit. Tightness is a symptom of pain, numbness, tingling, joint restriction in one area that could be very easily precipitated by a problem that you don't feel somewhere else, right? Silent problems. The other problems with connective tissue has got a pretty crummy blood supply, right? That limits your ability to heal and recover. Blood's going to bring the good stuff in, take the bad stuff away, right? When it comes to either recovering from a workout or from recovering from an injury. And lastly, when this stuff gets injured, instead of being happy, healthy, helping you move, stretching with you as you go to get in all these positions, it begins to get shorter. It begins to get thicker, and it loses its elasticity. So now we have something that was helping us move before, pushing us in the other direction, and actually fighting movement from the inside, often causing us to wear and tear in ways that we weren't really designed to wear and tear, that aren't best for our bodies. Ultimately, that can lead to inflammation, pain, injury, higher risk of injury. If you look at a workout, like every one of us has been in the weight room and looked at the workout and been like, oh God, those first sets are gonna suck so bad because I'm sore, I'm stiff, I already know my hips are a little bit tight. When I try to get real deep in that squat, it's gonna suck. If you look at a workout and you're already thinking that in your head, you need to be thinking about pre-workout mobility right away in the areas that you're already considering as being tight. If you look at a workout and you're like, man, the last time I did RDLs like that heavy or that many of them, I had a hard time sitting down for 3 days, and that really impacted my ability to get into the next workout comfortably, that's maybe a time when you might want to bias a little bit on the back end. A little bit more post-workout mobility rolling out after the fact. There are ways in which, with the time that you have to manage, that you can use that time to your best benefit. And of course, if you had time to do both, that's great. But again, looking at the workout, that's one way to begin to assess where you're going to get a lot of bang for your buck. We're going to go next door. I tend to look at the lacrosse ball kind of like, the difference between the toothbrush and floss. The toothbrush is your foam roller. It's a great way for you to get at the stuff that's easily accessible on the surface. It's a great way to cover a lot of area, a lot of surface area. The lacrosse ball, it can be used in that way for smaller areas, but really ultimately it's there to get the hot spots. That's how I use it. So we're going to go next door and talk about a couple of ways to do that. Before we do anything else, we're just going to do a toe touch, right? Simple thing, don't think about it too much. Feet are going to be together. You're not going to let your knees bend. If you've got any aches, pains that would cause you problems in this position, you can just skip it. We're just going to bend forward, try to touch the toes, get as far as you can, and then get a clear snapshot for where you feel the tension, right? Does it exist in the back of your legs, in the back of your knees, your butt, your back? Where does it live? So we're just going to bend forward, let the head hang. So what we're going to do is we're going to go from the big toe back, and we're going to scan from the big toe back, and then we're going to go from the middle toe back and the pinky toe back. We're going to go back and forth, and then we're going to try to find a hot spot. Okay? So basically, you're going to scan the full length of your foot and try to find one area that feels like it's got maybe a little bit more tenderness than the stuff around it. Might all kind of suck a little bit, but try to find something that jumps out to you. When you've got a spot that feels like it feels a little bit more tender than the stuff around it, I want you to just throw a hand up if you've got a good spot. So we're going to hold on here, and I'm going to park it for 30 seconds. Generally speaking, what you want to experience when you're holding, we're just going to try to stay still. So no more wiggling on it. We're just going to park, hunker down, put as much pressure as you can stomach. The things you don't want to be feeling. You don't want to be feeling anything going to sleep. No numbness, no tingling, no pins and needles, no shooting pains that are going way up the leg or down to the toes. We're going to hold pressure ideally within 30 seconds, we start to see that tenderness getting better. You can hold it for longer, but 30 seconds is kind of the do or die point, right? It's either starting to get better or it's not. All right, so we're just gonna shake the feet out, and then we're gonna do the toe touch again. We're gonna see if there are any differences. Being cold, again, we're looking at, do I get farther forward? Do I feel it anywhere different? So let's go ahead and bend forward, head for the toes. And if you felt like you picked up a little more range than the first time, go ahead and come up and raise your hand. So if you picked up an inch or 2 inches or something like that, usually what we're going to see is roughly 80 to 90% of people in a cold room are going to get a little farther forward. So what just happened? What I think it demonstrates for us is that although most of us, when we bend forward, where do we feel it, right? Felt it hands, butt, back of the knees, calves, back, somewhere like that. Nobody felt it on the bottom of your foot, and yet by addressing the bottom of the foot, someplace that we didn't really notice tension, someplace that's built for movement, we were able to influence things higher up the chain. Now, whether or not this, as you mentioned, was because the connective tissue in my posterior chain goes all the way back over my heel and actually inserts into the plantar fascia on the bottom of my foot, maybe it's because of that, and I just got one link in the chain and loosened up, the rest loosened up, or whether it's a neurological phenomenon where my body was protecting me from moving forward and just trusts that range a little bit more. Now, we can't really say for sure, but again, I think the important point is that you can have a very immediate effect, right? So right now we have a window. If we took, say, a movement, if you're like bending forward and you can only get to here, do you have a whole lot of business deadlifting on the floor? I would say probably not. So if we can take this, or tools like it, and we can use it in the warm-up, right? So we already know deadlifting for me feels stiff. I dread those first cold sets. So I want to prioritize the stuff on the front end of the areas that are tight. If I can do that, now I can get down farther. I'm actually safer to load that range because my body's not fighting itself anymore. Does that make sense? So this provides a window for training where ultimately, or for play, right, for sport, where you can take advantage of ranges that you might not have had access to, less likely for your body to fight itself, which honestly creates a lot less likelihood that you're going to get hurt, right? And this can be the same anywhere on your body. It's the same approach. Whether I have someone working their hamstring, their quad, T-spine, a great area to address for mobility, one that tends to get certainly stuck, particularly flexion. There's a bunch of ways to do it. You can do it on the floor or up against the wall. You can use a single or a double. They've got double lacrosse balls up there. Looks like a peanut or like other things, I guess. So, but at any rate, you're going to place it between your shoulder blade and your spine, not on the middle of the spine, not on the bumps, right? You want to be on the mushy stuff, on the soft tissues. Give yourself a hug and squat. So yeah, you'll just squat up and down. The ball will kind of do the work. And then when you find a good spot, you park, you hold on it, and you wait. Same thing, 30 seconds. You can go up to 90 seconds if you want. You avoid the tingling, and that's it. The other thing to do, particularly for that area, if it's a soft tissue problem, that's going to work really well. If it's a joint restriction, you're better off doing some of the extension drills where you place the foam roller under your mid-back and kind of do those back bends. You guys done those? I'll demo it really, really fast. And then if you need, I know Coach knows this one, any of the other coaches can take you through it. But if you want to address the ability of that area to extend, which it does tend to get locked in flexion, then you just place it right in that same area, maybe a little bit below. You wrap your hands back behind your neck, and you just allow gravity to kind of take you back without overly arching your lower back or neck. So you want all that movement to come where the foam roller is sitting. Those two, you just rep it out. 10 reps is good. You can cycle some breathing patterns with that. Works really well. A whole lot of ways to make it work. If you guys have any questions that we didn't cover today, please grab my card. Coach has my cards. You guys have a great therapist working on you here, but I'm right up the road if you need any extra work done. I'm here to support you guys and what you're trying to accomplish here. And I wish you the very best. Good luck, guys.
I appreciate it.